The year is 1971. The place? A Northwest Orient Airlines commercial flight bound for Seattle. A man approximately 45 years old, dressed in a black suit, approaches the flight attendant and hands her a note. The flight attendant exhales with indifference. Another lonely businessman trying to offer her his phone number. She takes the note and puts it in her purse without even looking at it. The man leans towards her and whispers in her ear, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." This is the story of D.B. Cooper, the man who hijacked a plane and then jumped into the void, never to be seen again. This case remains the only unsolved case of air piracy in the history of commercial aviation. And if you stick around to the end, you'll find out who D.B. Cooper probably really was. On November 24th, 1971, the night of Thanksgiving that year, a mysterious man in a suit carrying a briefcase approached the counter at the Portland airport to purchase a ticket to Seattle. When asked for his name for the ticket, he calmly replied, "Dan Cooper." Cooper took seat 18E in the last row and made himself comfortable for takeoff. As soon as the plane left Portland, the man set his plan into motion. Cooper handed the note to the flight attendant, informing her he was carrying an explosive, and instructed her to sit beside him. The flight attendant, whose last name was Schaffner, followed his instructions. Fearful, she asked to see the explosive. Cooper opened his briefcase and showed it to her. Schaffner understood this was serious. Cooper, relaxed as he sipped on a 7-Up, explained his demands to Schaffner. He wanted $200,000 in a backpack, equivalent to $1.5 million today, and 4 parachutes, all before 5 p.m. Additionally, he demanded that once the plane landed, it be refueled and all passengers remain seated. Schaffner rushed to the cockpit, where she explained the situation to the pilots. They immediately contacted Seattle Airport and relayed Cooper's demands. Meanwhile, the pilot asked the second flight attendant, McCoy, to sit next to Cooper and act as the intermediary between him and the pilots. Seattle Airport contacted the FBI and the local police department, who managed the logistics to meet Cooper's demands. The flight proceeded normally. Cooper was very calm, even conversing with McCoy. She shared that she was from Minnesota, to which she replied it was a very nice country. He even offered her a cigarette, and though she had recently quit smoking, she accepted. Cooper occasionally looked out the window, showing he was very familiar with the terrain, as he once correctly remarked to McCoy, "That looks like Tacoma down there." Feeling slightly more comfortable with him, McCoy asked why he had chosen a flight from her airline for his crime. Cooper laughed and replied, "It's not because I have a grudge against your airline, just because I have a grudge." When the plane landed, everything was ready to fulfill Cooper's demands. The passengers remained seated. McCoy went out to collect the parachutes and money, as Cooper had instructed, and handed them over. He made her wait while he inspected the money, and in an attempt to lighten the tension, she jokingly asked if she could have some of it. Cooper looked at her sternly and replied, "Sure," offering her one of the bundles of cash. She quickly clarified it was a joke, to which Cooper shrugged and continued his inspection. After reviewing the money, Cooper indicated the passengers could leave the plane. Schaffner and another flight attendant, Hancock, asked for permission to disembark as well, which he allowed. However, not everyone would be so lucky. When McCoy asked if she could leave too, Cooper looked at her seriously and said she had to stay with him. He then shared his new instructions with the pilots. Among them, they were to fly southeast towards Mexico City at the slowest possible speed and keeping the cabin unpressurized. At 7:40 p.m., the plane was back in the air. Cooper instructed McCoy to go to the cockpit and not come out again. McCoy locked herself in the cockpit with the pilots, and the plane continued its course. Finally, it landed in Reno at 11:02 p.m. The FBI immediately boarded to inspect the plane, but there was no trace of the mysterious hijacker. Cooper was gone. The FBI launched an extensive investigation. Although it was evident Cooper had parachuted out, it was almost impossible to pinpoint exactly where he had jumped and where he had landed. The FBI knew that to find any clues leading to Cooper, they had to build a profile, so they set to work analyzing all the evidence, speaking to witnesses, and evaluating the hijacker's modus operandi. The result was fascinating. The FBI categorized Cooper as a methodical man who had planned absolutely everything. He was also very familiar with the area, as he demonstrated by identifying Tacoma from above. Additionally, he was extremely prepared. When given the parachutes, he knew exactly how to strap them on, and yes, he was extremely intelligent. Why do you think Cooper requested 4 parachutes when he was the only person jumping? Cooper knew that if he only requested 1 parachute, it was likely he would be given one that didn't work to capture him or ensure he fell to his death. However, by requesting 4, the FBI assumed he planned to take innocent hostages with him, so they couldn't risk giving him a faulty parachute. With the profile established and a composite sketch created with witnesses' help, the FBI launched one of the most exhaustive investigations in history, extending until 2016, a span of over 45 years. What was the true identity of D.B. Cooper? Joe Laic was a retired U.S. Army veteran who served in the Korean War. Just 2 months before the D.B. Cooper case, his daughter was taken hostage in a kidnapping, and due to the FBI's mishandling of the negotiation, she was killed by her captor. Laic harbored deep resentment towards the FBI for this error, which took away the person he loved most in his life. During the investigation of the D.B. Cooper crime, the FBI found particles of rare metals, such as unalloyed titanium, on Cooper's airplane seat. At the time, Laic worked as a production supervisor in an electronic capacitor factory and was likely exposed to the materials found on the seat. Adding to this, there was the phrase Cooper had told the flight attendant Mucklow, "It's not because I have a grudge against your airline. It's just because I have a grudge." Laic had a motive to commit the crime. Everything seemed to fit, and Laic quickly became a suspect for the FBI. As a result, several rounds of interrogations were conducted to link him to the case. What happened in the end? Despite Laic fitting Cooper's profile, the FBI couldn't find enough evidence to bring charges against him, and he was released. The FBI had to keep searching, and shortly thereafter, they stumbled upon a very interesting character. Richard McCoy was a U.S. Army veteran who served 2 tours in Vietnam. After his military service, he developed a passion for skydiving. In April 1972, just 5 months after D.B. Cooper's crime, McCoy boarded a United Airlines flight on the same airplane model Cooper had used and pulled out a paperweight resembling a grenade. His demands? $500,000, and yes, 4 parachutes. Once his demands were met at San Francisco Airport, McCoy instructed the pilots to take the plane back into the air and jumped over Utah. McCoy was found and arrested 2 days later, receiving a 45-year prison sentence. After 2 years at the Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary, alarms went off. There had been an escape. McCoy had managed to break out with the help of some accomplices. However, his story wouldn't have a happy ending. FBI agents acted swiftly, locating McCoy. A shootout ensued, ending with McCoy's death. Despite being caught, McCoy came closest to replicating Cooper's crime. He had done almost everything so well that he was immediately suspected of being Cooper himself. Though McCoy always denied being D.B. Cooper, there were notable similarities in their physical appearance and modus operandi. Even some FBI agents, like Russell Kalame, were convinced McCoy was Cooper. However, the FBI doesn't consider McCoy a suspect because his age doesn't match. McCoy was 29, while Cooper was described as a man around 45. Additionally, there were noticeable physical differences between the two, such as the shape of their ears. For these reasons, the FBI ruled out McCoy and continued its investigation. It would take 39 years before the FBI encountered a new potential candidate. In July 2011, a woman named Marla Cooper appeared in the media claiming she knew D.B. Cooper's true identity. Who was it? She assured it was her uncle, Lynn Doyle Cooper. Marla recalled that when she was 8 years old, she overheard her Uncle Cooper and another uncle planning something very mischievous involving very expensive walkie-talkies. The day after this conversation, the Northwest Orient Airlines hijacking occurred. That same evening, Marla saw her uncle return home with his shirt covered in blood. Quite the coincidence, isn't it? Her uncle had passed away in 1999, so no judicial process could be carried out. However, the national uproar caused by Marla's claims forced the FBI to compare her uncle's DNA with what had been found on D.B. Cooper's seat. What was the result? There was no match. Over the 45 years of the investigation, there were more than 1,000 suspects. As you can see, the possibilities for D.B. Cooper's identity seemed practically endless, and none of the suspects fit 100%. But what if I told you there was a suspect who did? Someone who checks all the boxes and might have been the perfect D.B. Cooper. Ted Braden. Theodore Burdett Braden Jr., better known as Ted Braden, was a Special Forces member during the Vietnam War. He joined the military at just 16 years old and quickly became one of its best parachutists, capable of performing some of the most complicated and dangerous jumps, even representing the Army in skydiving competitions. Braden spent 23 months in Vietnam, during which he conducted several classified operations. He was a superstar of the U.S. Army. So, what happened? Braden was always an intelligent and highly skilled man, but also very greedy. So much so that in December 1966, Braden abandoned his unit in Vietnam and escaped to the Congo to work as a mercenary, where he knew he could earn far more money with his abilities. However, his plan didn't go as expected. Within a few months, he was found and arrested by CIA agents and brought back to the US. Everyone anticipated an exemplary punishment for Braden. Desertion during wartime is a capital offense that can even result in the death penalty. What happened was a major surprise. The military determined that for his crime, Braden would only receive 2 penalties, if they can even be called that. The first was that he could no longer enlist in the military. The second was that he would receive an honorable discharge. What's an honorable discharge? It's a type of military separation granted to service members who have completed their contracts and obligations satisfactorily, allowing the veteran to access all military benefits. It almost seems more like a reward than a punishment, doesn't it? Braden was set free, but he didn't leave a peaceful life. On several occasions, he was caught committing crimes like car theft, but always faced minimal consequences. Few people in the US had the physical abilities and technical knowledge to carry out D.B. Cooper's heist. One of the most prominent names on the short list was Braden, who, in addition to having an extensive criminal record, was described by former commanders and family members as the perfect combination of intelligence and criminality. In the Special Forces community, those who knew Braden's intellect, temperament, and skills were absolutely convinced that he was D.B. Cooper. Physically, Braden was nearly identical to Cooper, and his age aligned with Cooper's estimated age, 43 years old. The similarities were too many. Everything fit. It seemed so obvious. So if everyone suspected Braden, why was he never officially named a suspect? The answer lies in another question. Don't you find it strange that after committing a crime that typically carries a life sentence or even the death penalty, Braden was let go with minimal consequences? Why do you think that was? It's simple. Braden was asked for only one thing in exchange for his freedom. Just one. To keep quiet about what he saw and did during his time in classified operations. Braden knew too much. He spent nearly 2 years leading covert missions in Vietnam, operations that weren't public knowledge and were rumored to be full of immoral and atrocious actions. The FBI, along with the CIA, knew that if they pursued Braden for the D.B. Cooper case, there was a huge chance that everything he knew would come to light, and that was a risk they couldn't take. The D.B. Cooper case is one of the most sensational mysteries in U.S. history, so much so that it has become a part of pop culture, referenced in countless songs, movies, and series like Breaking Bad and Loki. To this day, the case remains open. Despite the vast numbers of theories and suspects, the FBI has yet to present a definitive conclusion. Perhaps because it's not in their interest to do so. What do you think? Was Braden D.B. Cooper? Or do you believe the real criminal vanished without a trace, never to be found? Let us know in the comments. Did you know this man won $1 million on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire by cheating? Find out how he did it in this video.